You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SIBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SIBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SIBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again for your bi-weekly options extravaganza known around the globe as the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from this aforementioned network. Welcome you back to a fun week of content. Kicking off now. If I sound a little bit low energy, I had to be out at the airport at an extremely early hour this morning. So I'm slowly waking up as the show progresses here. So bear with me, listeners. I'm relying on my two co-hosts today to carry the energy load and slowly wake me up here during the show. So let's see if they do their jobs, because I am joined by the uncleist of Mike's, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, as well as, of course, in a surprise curveball on the Monday show by the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Remember, if you want to enjoy all the goodness on the network this week, then make sure you're listening to the full network. If you do like what you hear, then, of course, throw some stars our way. It does help new people continue to discover the show. And if you want to go above and beyond, engage with even more content than just on the network itself, and, of course, live streams, all sorts of fun, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. As we commence our broadcast week, listeners, the way we are wont to do, a little bit of the old 80s wrestling trivia. All right, listeners. I was sucked down a rabbit hole by this particular character over the weekend. Don't ask me why. It's a long story. But needless to say, this character we're going to talk about today, one of the top heels, some might say the top heel of 80s wrestling, which was always kind of strange to me they gave him that moniker, because I watched him as a heel early on. I was really young, but when I was really starting to get more into wrestling, a little bit older, was when he was actually more transitioning into a face, and he actually had a lot of face work. A good guy, if you will, listeners, in wrestling vernacular. Of course, he was one of the early incarnations of what became The Rock, wrestlers who tried to transition into Hollywood. This one didn't quite go that well, but he did have some infamous, shall we say, cult classics along the way. So he came and went from the WWF many times during the 80s and indeed into the early 90s. And when he eventually left WWF again, like all of them did in the early to mid 90s, and went over to WCW, the rival promotion, all the top people from WWF did, he came into that new promotion in the early 90s as a face. Actually came in and attacked heel Hulk Hogan in a great reversal of their roles from many years ago. Of course, he also infamously gave an interview in the early 2000s, I think around 2003, where he said, I'm not going to live to 65. I'm way too beaten up for my years as a wrestler. And of course, he didn't. He died at about in 2015 at the age of, I think he was around 62. So a few years shy of that goal that he said he wasn't going to live to himself. So a top heel did kind of turn face, even though he's mostly known as a heel. Tried to be The Rock early on and had, I guess I could say, middling success, but obviously did not become The Rock. The Rock kind of carved that mold unto himself years later. Let's go around the horn. Like I said, I'm joined by the Rock Lobster today, so we'll start with him in fairness. He will not get this, but he can try nonetheless. Mr. Rock Lobster, most of the big faces of WWF in that era. Hulk Hogan. Andre the Giant, even though he did some heel stuff. Macho Man also did some heel work. This guy is right up there with them, but he was their antagonist. So if you can think of a bad guy from the 80s, go ahead, name him. 80s wrestling.
I was just going to say Jesse the Body Ventura. But...
All right, that's not a bad guess. And he was mostly an announcer even by that point, but a heel announcer. Not a bad guess, It's not right, but maybe I'll have to mull it over. Just as the fact that you got someone who's even remotely close. I might give you half a point. We'll see. We'll see how the wrestling gods favor you now. And now let's go out to the uncle list of Mikes. Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Sir, I have a feeling you know who the top heel of the 80s was and who went out to try to be the Rock. Didn't really work out that well. Came and went from WWF many times. And, of course, when he did premiere in WCW in like the 90s, he was a face, full-on face, attacking heel Hogan in a reversal of their infamous role from years earlier, WrestleMania, sir. Who am I talking about?
Well, I disagree of him being the best heel of the 80s, but I do know who you're talking about. I will go with Hot Rod.
Yes.
Rowdy Roddy.
Some people think he's the greatest heel of all time. Forget the 80s. I mean, he had Piper's Pit. He kind of created the talking bits that most guys didn't do back then. He is enshrined in that Mount Rushmore of wrestlers to many people.
No question.
All right, there you go. So you got it. Hot Rod, Roddy Piper. Well done there, sir. Of course, he lives on now with Ronda Rousey, actually, the former UFC fighter. Came over, and she is Rowdy Ronda Rousey. She wears a skirt or, the kilt he used to wear, like his skirt. She wore his jacket when she comes in. She calls herself Rowdy, so a lot of ties into Roddy Piper there. So there you go, listeners. Oh, we give Andrew a half point. Let's be nice again. Mr. Rock Lobster, before we roll out of this, do me a favor. Name any woodworking instrument. Go.
A plane.
There you go. All right, half point bonus for you. All right, so I'll give you a half point. I'll give you a half point for Jesse the Body, and I'll give you a half point for knowing the plane. There you go. 1 point for the Rock Lobster.
I've heard of Roddy Piper before, too.
I figured you would have. That's why I thought you maybe had a chance at this one. It wasn't as deep cut as some of our others out there. So there you go, listeners. A point for the Rock Lobster, and actually a point for Uncle Mike. So we got a bit of a tie here as we keep on rolling into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, listeners, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. If you haven't, I would encourage you to go on YouTube, go into look at some of the Real Sports, some of the interviews he did. Later on in his life, he takes some interesting perspective on wrestling and maybe how destructive it was to his life and to his body. It's not happy viewing, but it is kind of interesting nonetheless, the ultimate evolution of Roddy Piper. But let's get into the ultimate evolution of the markets today. And, when I got back from the airports crazy early, things were looking mostly mixed. Now that we're heading full on into show proper, things have all swung to the green. The Dow, which was the laggard earlier in the morning, is now up about 0.25%. S&P up about 1/3%. NASDAQ up about 0.7%. That means most of our friends in the vol space are down slightly or kind of unched. In fact, VIX, when we kicked off, was right around 17.25, which puts it almost literally unched from where we were on Thursday. So not a heck of a lot of love there. VVIX 95 down about 4 handles from where we were this time last week. VXX 36 3/4 down about a 1/4 point. UVXY 340 down 0.2 of a point. You get the drill. SVIX 19.5 up 0.6 of a point. Of course, our inverse friend UVIX 1020 down about 0.8 of a point, and VolQ 17.25 down 3/4 of a point. All right, Uncle Mike, you were technically our winner today, even though the Rock Lobster acquitted himself admirably today, knowing all those woodworking tools and whatnot. Mr. Uncle Mike, what are your enduring memories? And we talked about him versus Hogan and Mr. T in WrestleMania 1. That's kind of the infamous one. People forget, if he was bad in that match, right, there's no real WrestleMania. There's no WWF, right? The heel is a very important part of that match. Everyone thinks of Hogan, but he was the main antagonist, so he needs to get some credit for that. But also, any other thoughts you have on the Hot Rod, sir, and then what's lighting up your tape in this kind of weird start to the week?
I'll do my best to keep it brief on my respect for Hot Rod, because he was an amazing wrestler with what he did to the sport. And I got nothing but love and respect for what he did. The reason I don't think he was the top heel of the 80s is because he kind of did become face. So I think that disqualifies him. The Iron Sheik is my number one heel of the 80s.
Yeah, when I think of Piper, I very much think of him as a face, which is kind of weird, but it's true.
He's both. He's the reason why he was so good is because he was so dedicated to the sport. Just like when he's going out there with a fake hip and letting Hogan beat the crap out of him on it. And I mean, he was just, I can't even describe it. So like in terms of like in his heel days, what him and Pedro Guerrero or Chavo Guerrero, I forget, one of the Guerreros had a big feud going. And so it was in California, in an area which is primarily Hispanic. And so what Rowdy Piper did, everyone hated Piper because he did a lot of mean things to Guerrero. And so he was amazing at what he did. And so finally he said, all right, guys, I want to apologize to everybody for all the mean things I've been doing to Guerrero. So just as a way of apology, I want to play the Mexican national anthem on my bagpipes. And so everybody stood, everyone's taking it very seriously. And so Rowdy Piper proceeded to play La Cucaracha and started a riot. I mean, the guy was just something else with what he would do. And, in the end, there's the argument of who was the icon, Hogan or Piper? And Piper said, I am the icon, because you know what it stands for? I cower over no one. The thing with Jimmy Snuka of what he did to him on Piper's pick because he wanted to get over for his family. His family adored him with how much he loved his daughters. And I could not say enough good. The final good thing I'll say about him in the end, he was struggling like a lot of wrestlers were, but he literally left a message on Hulk Hogan's voicemail like a day or two before he died. He said, you know what? I'm finally happy. I'm dancing with Jesus today. And that's Hulk Hogan got that the day after he died. And I don't know. I mean, it was sad that they left us way too soon, but with everything that guy did, wrestling today does not exist without the way it did. The golden age of wrestling that we often talk about so fondly, it does not exist without Rowdy Piper. The guy was the man.
Well said. Yeah, I would definitely say checking out some of that media I mentioned, I got a different impression. You think of these guys as mostly meatheads and steroid freaks, and he certainly was. He did the latter. He admitted to it. But yeah, he's definitely much more well-spoken, well-thought, rational fellow than you would expect. And you're right, very devoted to his family. All that fun stuff out there. All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what's lighting up your tape in a not exactly a heel type of market, sir?
Well, it's funny because it's like you were getting ready to say not exactly an Uncle Mike type of day because it wasn't when the show started, but now it kind of is. We're up 16 points since the show started. So it's the option block effect in that when we opened the show, S&P, I'm showing 41.34. Now we're up 5 points since we started. So either way, we've had a nice little rally over the course of the last half hour, 45 minutes in the S&P. So they must have known we're talking about Rowdy Piper today. So he's influencing God up in heaven, apparently, with the markets. But with that, I still think we're kind of in the wait and see mode, but we don't know what we're waiting to see. Is it going to be the Fed? Are they going to pause? I don't think they're going to lower rates, but I think maybe we're waiting to see if perhaps they pause raising rates. I would not, if I were the Fed, I would pause right now. but in the next meeting coming up in another few weeks. But I'm not the Fed. We have bonds selling off a little bit on the day today, not a ton, but we do have that. And so we're just kind of in wait and see mode. And just with some other things that we have going on with the market today in terms of the sectors, we have energy kind of as a leading sector right now with XLE up just under 1% on the day. Financials are up 0.9% on the day. So we are having some movement there. Then just in terms of the commodities, with where we are, oil's up $1.33 on the day, back over the 70 mark, 71.37. Natural gas has a little bit of movement going on today, and Bitcoin still can't crack that 30,000 mark. It's still below it. It is having a fairly strong day today, with it up 4.5% on everything. But that's kind of where we're at right now, and yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
Of course, if you want more crypto, listeners, stay tuned. Coming up a little bit later today, we will, of course, have the old crypto rundown, a.k.a. Uncle Mike's real favorite show here on the network, as we turn now to the guy who can always answer your woodworking trivia questions. He is the Rock Lobster. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, what's catching your eye out there in kind of a weird, almost sleepy start to the market, just like me? Just a sleepy start to the trading week, sir.
Wow, did you drop people off, or did you pick people up?
I dropped people off, yes. When you got to do that like pre 5 a.m., it's never good.
Yeah. Well, I think every weekend that goes by where the news isn't terrible, the market seems to like it. I mean, you had VIX was up this morning. I blew out some VIX puts thinking, oh, well, maybe now we kind of go down. But, of course, now they're going to all be higher right now today. So not quite the take I wanted on them. But you look at what's going on, and okay, and I kind of agree with Mike here. I think the Fed could raise if they want to, but I don't really think they need to at this point. I think it's more important that Uncle Sam gets on board and stops spending money. I think that's a big part of them raising rates at this point, is that clearly the federal government can't be trusted, to just borrow at zero rates for, an infinite amount of time. So again, it's the same thing. The right hand has not talked to the left hand now pretty much for a solid year when it comes to spending, dollar creation and all that other, and so now from a stock point of view, the Qs, and what Kevin told us on Vol Views, the Qs are up 23% this year. I don't know about, now obviously they had a bad 2022, so they're making from a very high level, by the way, in 2021. But I mean, there's a lot of the rest of the market that would be happy to catch up. So, to be honest, I'm not bearish. Like, can things be, things can be solved. Maybe the banking issues aren't as bad as people are making out, and just the shorts are trying to pile into these community banks because there are no natural buyers right there because there's too many questions around. And I think a lot of those times, that could be a recipe for a surprise rally. The rest of the market can actually rally. The 4 or 5 big Q stocks don't need to rally, and all the rest of the stocks can rally and we can be up. And I think that's kind of what's happening today. So, and I think, again, every day that goes by that we don't have bad news is probably okay. Now, and there's, they're talking, oh, there's going to be positive talks on the debt and all, and it's really quite ridiculous. And usually, this problem kind of solves itself. They just have to some compromise on not spending a ridiculous amount of money, which at some point they won't have any choice anymore because it's possible people stop buying government bonds for the interest rates they're paying. So hopefully that will not come to pass while we're living. But I think as far as the market goes, it's right now it's more a lack of bad news than really any good news, because not much is really changing. So, and we'll see what happens. But a lot of stocks are at very bargain prices, that pay decent dividends. And those are the things that are kind of having a little bit of a rally today. Now, one thing I will mention, just in general, that I was surprised at, like all the stocks like Disney, Paramount, Discovery, all these streaming channel stocks, although Amazon has made a little bit of a bounce, they're all kind of in the basement. I was pretty surprised. Who knew that once everybody gets into streaming that the competition would be fierce? The only one really that survived, or the one that survived the best, is Netflix right now. To be quite honest, I mean, I know it's come off of a higher level, but I mean, for the most part, Netflix is, I guess it's not $700 anymore, but it's certainly not $150 anymore like it was a year ago. It's $350 now. So Netflix is kind of out of the basement, but for the most part, all those other streaming competitors have really had a hard time. So I don't know if they're a bargain at this point, but they're about as cheap as they've been in a year. So that's not a bad place to look. So again, I think that's kind of the market that we have, though. And to be quite honest, VIX is up only 15 cents. It was actually over 18 this morning when the market was down, 0.5% maybe, or 0.3%. So there's not a lot of momentum either way. And I am viewing the lack of bad news as good news. So, that's the positive that we can take away today.
Look at you being all bright and cheerful here.
Yeah,
on the show. What have you done with the Rock Lobster here on the show? By the way, listeners, I have updated standings for our WWF, because that's what it was in the 80s, wrestling trivia game right now. Uncle Mike extending his lead. He has 12.5 points right now. The Meatball obviously getting no points today, still hanging out at 7. And the Rock Lobster climbing to a respectable 3. Who knew that knowledge of woodworking implementation and tools would come in handy here on our old 80s wrestling trivia game? I say all that, listeners, because when you look around, well, not a ton lighting it up out there in the market. With the exception, I will say VIX is starting to come a little bit more alive. We are seeing 445,000 contracts on the tape, so it's not like it's at 250 right now, anything along those lines. That ADV still threatening to break 800K, 794 right now. So VIX is managing to remain robust in spite of the fact that not a heck of a lot going on out there. You'll see what I mean when we get to the single names in particular. Listen, it's a bit of a wasteland out there today. SPY, same deal, 4.6 million. SPY is pretty reliable. It's going to be around 4.5 million this time of the show. It could be just a day that paint is drying elsewhere and SPY can still put up the numbers. So SPY is just a beast unto itself these days. The ADV, 8.2 million. The S, 1.4 million. That's not bad either. I mean, 1.5 million is about what you expect now these days at this time of the session in the S, and it's pretty close to that. The ADV, 2.7 million. So getting back up towards that over 3 million it was not too long ago. The IWM, the small caps, 600K exactly. The ADV, still 1 million out there. So IWM managing to put up some numbers. And the Q is 1.4 million. The ADV, 2.75 million. So it's pretty much right around halfway there as well. So the indexes kind of show a different tale than the single names. Because when we go out there, listeners, it is, I think calling it paint drying is, to put it mildly, it only cost you 169,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. Listen, we don't usually see that level, maybe August, mid to late July, late December. The days when no one's around and no one's trading, that's when we see 160-odd thousand contracts to break into the top 10. We were over 300,000 just very recently on the show. So that shows you not a heck of a lot lighting it up out there in the single names. When I start breaking down the lists, you're going to be surprised at where some names are falling today, too. But number 10 gets us to our old friend, not the Goog L's. Got to wait a little bit for them. But the Googs, still back in there. Of course, they had Google I.O. last week. It drove the stock quite a bit. Anytime they even whisper the letters AI, that's it. That's all it takes for the stock to pop. It's given some of that back today. Goog Class C, so no L, listeners. 117.25, off about 2/3 of a point. Good for, like we said, that not exactly impressive 169,000. This is back to where I used to joke. When I said, we see Google in the top 10, it's a pretty quiet day. That hasn't been the case post this AI tsunami, whatever you want to call it. But this is kind of what I used to come to expect with Google. Not a heck of a lot. When they're in our top 10, usually the day is not exactly a banger. Number 9, our old friend Softy. Man, there's mixed signals. This is easy for me to say. I'm sleepy today. Listen, there's very mixed signals on what the hell's going on with this Activision deal. One part of Europe loves it. One part of Europe hates it. We got issues with the DOJ with it here. So it's on again. It's off again. It kind of depends which jurisdiction you look at, which is just crazy. It's got to be infuriating for the folks over there at both Activision and Microsoft, you'd think as well. Some resolution one way or the other would probably be nice. But no, it looks like it's going to drag out for a while. 309 right now, off about 2 cents, so kind of unched on the day. They took it down as low as 307 and about a half earlier this morning. So obviously it has rallied back from there. Kind of unched right now. Good for 180,000. Yes, 180,000. Whole lot of nothing yet again, listeners. Number 8, we go back out to the land of contagion, this time to SoFi. 4 3/4, off about a quarter. This one's been an interesting one to watch, They came for it pretty aggressively last week, and then again this morning. Early on, they got it down to about $4.50. Got as low as $4.45 earlier this morning. They have rallied at about 30 cents from there, so maybe SoFi not circling the bowl the way some people have been expecting, at least for right now, but still off on the day, off about 28 cents or so on the day. So not a great day for SoFi, but not going out of business, at least not quite yet. Now we're getting a little bit more respectable, 277. I'd prefer to see this at number 10, but c'est la vie. That's what you get out there. Number 7, the other half of the Google phenomenon. It's the Alphabet Class A, listeners. 116 and about a half right now. Off nearly $1 for this one. This one good for 301,000 contracts. This is where we were starting a few sessions ago, listeners. Now it takes us up to number 7 to cross the 300K level. Number 6, this one probably is the biggest surprise for me on the list. I can't recall the last time I said Apple at the number 6 spot, yet that is where we are today, listeners. This is the most anemic I've seen Apple in ages. You got to really look hard to find a day where Apple has only done 347,000 contracts at this time of the show, but that's where we are today, listeners. All the way down at number 6. Apple 171, about 90, off about 70 cents on the day. My litmus test for the market. If Apple is red, then the market is not happy. Apple is red, so the market is clearly not happy, even though everything else is green on the day. And Apple is doing a whole lot of nothing. 350. I mean, it's a rounding error for Apple. But these days, Apple looking a lot lighter than it was. So intriguing stuff. Seems like there's more competition for that number 2, that silver medal, than there has been in the past. Number 5. The first half of our chip zone. These two are flipping lately, which is kind of interesting. Usually it's AMD around this level. Today it's NVIDIA, 349,000 contracts. NVIDIA up nearly $5, so I guess the AI bloom is back on the rose, trading 288.20 right now. Again, good for the number 5 spot. Right behind it, it's compatriot there in the chip zone. It's AMD, 350,000. It's only 1,000 contracts separating these two today. Very strange. AMD, 96.40, up about $1.12 on the day. Again, good for 350,000 contracts. Then we go to another 3, the artist formerly known as Facebook, Meta, coming in at number 3, 239 and about a quarter. Up, I should say, $5.50. My goodness. One of those, you take Meta and a few other names out of this equation, listeners, and what do we have for the market? What did Rock Lobster say earlier? There's a lot of other names that would maybe like to catch up to where these stocks are looking for the year. And yeah, these names are in a bit of rarefied air. 373,000 contracts for them on the tape today. So Meta outpacing Apple today, which is interesting. And then the number 2 spot today going to the Amazonians. Amazon, 394,000 contracts. That's number 2. And we're only at 394. I can't remember. It's been a while. I mean, you might have to go to around Christmas Day, New Year's Eve kind of stuff, Christmas Eve, to find volume like this anemic. I mean, Apple number 6, Amazon, the number 2 spot, only 394,000 contracts. We've started our top 10 at that level sometimes. Yeah, there's a whole heck of a lot of nothing. Also, I can't recall the last time we had such a chasm between number 2 and number 1. We'll get there in a second. Amazon, 110.60, up about a third of a point. Again, good for 394,000 contracts. And then the number 1 spot. Too tired today, listeners. Number 1 spot, Tesla. 1.08 million contracts. So we went from 394 at number 2 to 1.08 million contracts for number 1. Again, a very weird day, a mostly sleepy paint drying day, especially in the single names. The index is doing a little bit better. And then for some reason, Tesla lightening it up again, even though it's only off half a buck right now. And it only sold off, look, it's had about a $3 range, which is not nothing. Actually, no, it's had about a $5 range. That's a little bit more respectable. 169 and about 3/4 to the upside, and about 164.5. So about 5.25 was the range. So that's a little bit more respectable. Probably why they're putting up some numbers today. 167 and about 1/3 is where it's hanging out right now, off about 60 cents. But wow, I can't remember the last time we had that big of a gulf between 1 and 2 listeners. But that's the kind of weird day we're having out there. Mostly a heck of a lot of nothing, but some pockets of action like Tesla and a few of the indexes out there. Everything else kind of sleepy. Earnings are not sleepy, though. We've got names popping off today. Your favorite Monday.com. Not down with that name, but apparently they love it. So, the workflow management platform. Tomorrow we got Home Depot and the Container Store. So if you want to buy overpriced Tupperware, Container Store, can't beat it. Most expensive containers on the planet. Wednesday, Target, Jack in the Box, Cisco, and our old friend Stone Cold popping off on Wednesday. Thursday, Alibaba and Walmart. Alibaba was moving last week. We'll see what happens this week. And then Friday, John Deere and the old Foot Locker. Meanwhile, now it is time for us to see what we can find, listeners, in the weirdness. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners, let's get weird. Let's get wild. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron can dredge up on a day when there's not a heck of a lot of single name action out there, listeners. Let's go out to some weird ones. How about that? Let's add some newcomers to our stable of odd block analysis here. Let's go out first to Black Knight Inc., ticker symbol BKI. This is a corporation that provides integrated technology services, data, and analytics to the mortgage, lending, and real estate industries. Okay, there you go. IT for mortgage and real estate. Intriguing stuff, analytics, data, all kinds of fun out there. Ticker symbol BKI, trading 53 3/4, up about 8 cents today. It's not really a banger for them today. Let's see. On the year, we all know this market has kind of come under pressure. How many times have we talked about REITs and mortgage-related names, people loading up on puts on them? So you got to figure Black Knight may be feeling some of that heat as well. And that is the case. Again, once again, the polar opposite of what we were just talking about with Meta and some of these other big tech names that have been straight up this year. This name in the toilet, off 23% this year. A year ago, it was trading about $70. And that was pretty much all she wrote for this one. They got up to about 72 3/4 a couple of days later. And that was really it. And then they started selling it off the first time. Got down to 55 about even on November 7th. Then they tried to rally. It got up to about 64 and change on February 10th. And that was really all the steam it had. It's been straight down pretty much ever since to the new low it hit pretty much in the last couple of sessions of 53.15. Mr. Rock Lobster saw a bit of a weird print out there for a couple of reasons. We first noticed 6,500 of the OC double calls going up for $6 even. And it's weird for a couple of reasons. First off, it's Black Knight, so it's not putting up a lot of paper, listeners. So the market was $3 at $7.70. So it's anyone's guess what the hell they did at $6, listeners. This was all obviously orchestrated and negotiated upstairs and then is executed down here. They also did 6,500 of the OC double puts at the exact same time. So same strike. Also for $6, listeners. The stock was 53 3/4. So these are effectively at the money strikes here. Obviously, the puts are going to be a wee bit in the money here. But yeah, intriguing stuff. They did these for, and these were 320 at $8. So the market even worse here for the puts. So on first blush, same print, same level. looks like it might be a straddle. They could be loading up on a straddle here, expecting Black Knight to really just take it home. I mean, listen, then it's got to move $12 between now and October. Obviously, we know if they're savvy, they could delta hedge it and hedge the gamma. They can make some money if it vacillates around a bit. That's what we all used to do on the trading floor, obviously. But let's assume this is probably a straight up straddle, or it could be a bit of a conversion reversal. Again, there's so much wiggle room between these goalposts in terms of the execution. It's hard to really intuit it. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, while I go take a nap really quickly, what are your thoughts on? Do you think this is a straight up straddle as it looks at first blush? You think they're maybe doing a little bit of the old conversion reversal action? And do you notice any size stock prints going up? Because I was too tired to look, sir.
I'm trying to see if there are any stock prints on this one. So, of course, we have the nice $5 wide markets. We could start it off with that. I wonder what Henry would say about this. It's an odd kind of cross. So they just went for paying $12 for this straddle. Is that sort of how it was? It's not totally obvious on this, to be quite honest. Of course, now I know that's why we call it the odd block, because it is not obvious. But I'm looking at this one, and it was a $95 stock. The stock is at the bottom of, let's say, it's about the low since 2019 right here. It's kind of curious. This paper is kind of curious, just in the fact that it doesn't get a lot of volume. So all of a sudden, they put up 6,000 straddles. The only thing I will say, though, is there appeared to be 6,500 open on the puts already. So did they sell out the puts and then buy calls?
That would make it even better. That would be even better.
I mean, there's they're just changed polarity somehow. Where they were short the puts, maybe they bought them back. Because I'm just trying to see when the initial open was on the puts. I'm just looking right now. So those puts opened at around.
Those are June 6th.
Yeah, I'm looking at volume on the day.
Stock was 58 and a quarter.
I see April 6th, these puts went up at around $4. Maybe they bought them, sold them to close, and then bought the calls. This is a bit of a head scratcher on this one. Exactly what went down without knowing what happened that day before in early April. They've had it on for about a month, and then they flipped to all calls. So you got me on this, but it's definitely there's more. This volume today, I think, is more than the open interest in the whole name. So. That's except, obviously they're decided that this is the strike. And then at some point there was big open interest in the July 60s. But I mean, for the most part, this is a pretty inactive name. Again, I can only just say I am scratching my head. This is mission critical software for mortgages and the real estate market. So there you go. I mean, it looks like a real company, but this trade is I can't make heads or tails of this trade at all.
This one is bonkers. This is bonkers. This is too much for my sleep-addled brain at this moment. But on April 6th, they did roll from the April 65 puts. They dumped those out 6,200 times for 710, and then looks like they bought 6,000 of the OCK double puts. The stock was $58 at the time, so maybe they bought those, in which case that's pretty much a scratch. That's I don't know what they bought them for, but they dumped them for $7. So I mean, they could have done all right on those puts. But and then they flipped to the calls. I mean, what are we doing here? What crack are we smoking here in the old Black Knight?
It's definitely something, right? It's not, it's definitely something.
Well, we'll keep an eye on this one, listeners. We'll come back to it when perhaps we have saner, more well-rested heads to analyze this paper. But yeah, this definitely gets the Weirdsmobile flag of the day here. Just all sorts of fun stuff. Speaking of weird, let's keep it rolling out here. We talked about this one before, mostly to mock the name, the real, ticker symbol real. we joked with this before. This is kind of the online, but they also have brick and mortar. It's a consignment. It's an online pawn shop, effectively, / thrift store. But they try to do it more on the luxury end. They try to sell it as luxury goods. Let's see. Ticker symbol REAL. Right now, trading $1.32, up 20 cents or nearly 18%. So a nice pop for them today. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say we saw a bunch of calls, but you never know. We'll have to look and see. A year ago, they were trading 3 3/4. So before you get all hot and bothered that the stock is popping today, go back and look. And we've seen this one's had fits and starts. It was nearly $4 on May. Then it got down to 2 1/4 in June of last year. Then they rallied it again. 363 on June 24th and back down to 216 on July 26th and back up to 361 on August 8th. So this one's had a lot of fits and starts. That's just in a couple of months. And then they kind of sold it off again. They tried to rally it again, went from $1.21 in October to $2.26 in February. Then that seemed to be all the steam it had. The low for the year is exactly $1. They hit that just about a couple of weeks ago. This thing's been in the toilet for most of the year. They have tried to rally it multiple times, and they've all failed. Maybe this one has more legs. Looks like maybe someone, Mr. Rock Lobster, thinks that is the case because someone is scooping some calls in the real. In particular, we first noticed 2,420 of the June 1/2, so still slightly out of the money calls there, listeners, but obviously less so after today's action. They paid 15 cents. They lifted the offer for these bad boys. That's a 148 vol, if you are intrigued, listener. So, yeah, now we're starting to get back to some 2021 upside vol levels. That's nice. Fun to see. Then they came and did more, another 700. Also, I used for 14 cents this time. So, let's see. Did these go up a little earlier? And they went up about 17 seconds earlier. And then also, just for fun, we had also a print of nearly 600 of the May 1/2s going up for about 10 cents. Lifting the offer there all at the same time. So somebody was sweeping calls on the 1/2 strike across the board, listeners, getting as much as they could on the upside. Looks like right now a total of about 4,500 of the May 1/2s have traded and 8,500 of the June 1/2s have traded. So Mr. Rock Lobster, it seems like, as we would call it on the show here, a bit of a call palooza is afoot here in your favorite luxury thrift store. Say that a couple of times fast. Luxury thrift. The real, sir. What say you?
Luxury thrift. So it's a nice pawn shop, is what you're saying.
That's exactly what it is. It's a fancy pawn shop. They're like, look, we've discovered this hot new market, pawn shops.
It's again. Here's a more the real. And then I guess because I know, it was early in the morning, but there's nothing like a 15-cent option in a $1.50 stock, really, to get the listeners' juices.
That's the Alex Jacobson special.
Like I can still hear him in the background right now, going, what do you? Well, at least we can move on from the very beefy $12 straddle or conversion or combo or whatever the heck they did in the Black Knight, which I feel is kind of a strange name for mortgage.
Yeah, it's all sorts of weird
software.
I'm surprised that one didn't come across your big money flow radar. That's just a weird one.
It's definitely, trading is hard. So this is one where, again, a company with 3,400 employees. Oh, you could get a luxury art. You could get all kinds of. You can get Louis Vuitton, Prada, Rolex, Tiffany, and Valentino.
There you go, high-end pawn shop.
Operate a resale store, and the real.
You can't go sell grandma's dentures, but you can sell your Rolex to the real.
I guess so. And this is wow, boy. There is a lot of paper going up on these 1.5 strikes. So. I'm just looking at it, and it appears right now, again, it appears that somebody is just buying these calls and looking for a little bit of a pop. And like you said, it's not quite 2021 meme palooza ball, but it's, it's getting up there. Although the community bank stocks recently, PacWest had like a 400 ball. So it doesn't mean it can't happen. So apparently it looks like it is. Anyway, just looks like straight up call buying, like opening call buying paper. So we'll see. We'll see how excited they could get on this, but it just looks like they're buying like little cheapy options. See if it'll work.
Little cheapy Alex Jacobson specials. All right, Mr. Rock Lobster, we started you off with the Black Knight. We saw and raised you with the real, and now we will go all in with Robert Half International Inc., another newcomer here. This is a global human resource consulting firm. So ticker symbol RHI, trading 67.41, up about 33 cents right now on the year. Another one that's just in the toilet. A year ago, it was 90, pretty much the high for the year of 94.69. And then they came for it. They knocked it down to $71 in December. Then they tried to rally it again. February 2nd got up to almost $90, 88.71. And that was it for the rally. Then it's been pretty much down again ever since. Including right now, it's pretty much right around, just bounced off. Looks like in the last few sessions, it's 52-week low of 65.40, trading 67.40 right now. Looks like, though, Mr. Rock Lobster, maybe somebody thinks that the downside in Robert Half almost getting cut in half over the past year. They say, you know what, this far and no further, we're going to sell 2,854 of the June 60 puts for 45 cents. Listeners, the stock was right about here. There are earnings. Actually, there are no earnings. The earnings are in July, so no earnings in this cycle. So just straight up a little bit of the old premium harvest. Mr. Rock Lobster, what say you? You liking yourself a little bit of these Robert Half International puts?
Well, let's see here, Mr. Robert Half International puts. This is like, it's weird. I've heard of this company like way back when. It seems like, have we covered this?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Yeah, I mean, it pays a dividend. Just what it is, it's kind of one of those like sleepy companies, but it's kind of a real company. You know what I mean? Like it actually does real things and makes real money and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just, it's like one of the, okay, it has revenue and the company's worth about what the revenue is, and it's not very exciting. What is it like it is like talent executive search or something like that. So this is where I could see where somebody would write a call here, and that's, when you have the market going sideways, this stock is, it's down from it's about 50% of its top value, and it's like all these, I would just call like sort of Main Street companies, not like the big saucy tech companies, but just businesses that existed before Google, basically. It just looks like a regular buy right. There's just not a lot, there's not a lot to it, but line in the sand put.
It'd be a put, right? But other than that,
yes,
you're on the right track. So they obviously do a lot of human resources consulting for tech firms. So there is a bit of a tech angle to it, but you're right, not the sexiest of names. And someone's harvesting a little bit of the old sexy premium. But it's always sexy, listeners. Let's get to it. A little bit of the old strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, listeners, it is now time for my favorite part of the show because I don't have to say anything. It is the Uncle List of Mike's turn. It is time for the Strategy Block. Uncle Mike, sir, take it away while I go nap.
Take a nap. Got it. Buy the dump, sell the dump, I messed up my opening line. I'll try again. Buy the dump, sell the hump, don't diddle in the middle. And what on earth does that mean? Well, right now in my aggressive strategy, I'm of the school of thought to where, of course, I'm long-term bullish, but I think we're kind of in the middle right now in that we're below the highs of the year. We've yet to hit 4,200 on the year in the S&P, but we're still up there kind of. We're at 4127 as I'm saying this. And I think we have some floors at lower levels in the near area, in the closer area to the 4127 level. But I still think we're kind of in the middle. So with that being said, the position that I have on right now in my aggressive strategy, it's a long-term call spread to where it's minimal time decay every day. And but what I'm trying to do with this throughout the year is find shorter term trades to where I could help finance it through selling a vertical put spread in the near term or selling a vertical call spread in the near term, whatever the case may be. So with that being said, just a little bit about my methodology of what I like to look for, at least with the aggressive strategy. And I'm not referring to our covered calls or short puts, our collars, or our other option strategies. I'm talking about the most aggressive of the aggressive strategies here. Oftentimes, if the market were to dip, I'd like to sell a put spread. Now, I like selling put spreads off of dips because of the fact that, number one, in order for you to lose, it means that big move to the downside, or that dip, I'm doing air quotes since no one can see me, that dip is going to have to almost double for this trade to be wrong. And typically on the dip, if it went down fairly far, a lot of times it won't go down further. Now, am I wrong? Yeah, I'm wrong a lot. So it's like any trader would be.
Uncle Mike, you can feel free to tell him to stop typing, sir. I know you're very polite, but there you go. Mr. Rock Lobster, you're typing furiously. We can hear you.
I'm a terrible person. I thought I was muted.
There we go. Uncle Mike's too polite, but so there we go. There you go. Uncle Mike. Now, feel free to go about your strategy blocks.
So when we do have a dip, I like having a short put spread in if I feel that the dip is going to be kind of near the end of dipping, so to speak. However, to the upside, let's say we have a big move to the upside. There are times to where I like to trim some deltas on my longer term call spread, and I'll do that by selling a shorter term call spread. Once again, the market doesn't move in one direction forever, and that's often just kind of the way with which I like to do it because of the fact that if, let's say, I sold a call spread on a gain, if that's going to be bad, I know I will have made enough money from my other trades to where it won't quite be that bad. And if I sell a put spread on a dip, at least if I'm going down and losing money on this put spread, everyone else is too, in a big way, for everyone that would have been bullish in general. So that's just kind of the way with which I like to do it. I'm typically more of a reversal kind of guy in the near term. Not to say that momentum and buying the rally and hoping for a greater rally, there's a lot to that as well. But just in my case, I'm more of a reversal kind of guy. So with that, I will reverse back on to Mr. Longo to take us home.
What's that? I'm sorry, I was napping. Oh, I guess it's time for Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until the next episode of the show on Thursday. Really quickly, our question of the week just finished up a little while ago. We were talking about on the show last week. These troubled times, where are you allocating the majority of your portfolio? Gave you cash, gave you crypto, gave you equities, and commodity/fixed income. And cash took it, listeners, 45.6%. Kind of getting back to what Uncle Mike was alluding to. Maybe a lot of you not wanting to diddle in the middle right now, clearly hanging out in cash. Equities, 32.4%, so a respectable second, but a distant second nonetheless. Commodity/fixed income, 19.1%, only 2.9% for crypto. So intriguing stuff out there. Let's go around the horn. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are you keeping an eye on until our Thursday show, sir?
And I even found the mute button at the right time. You know what? Are we good? Is this, what's going on with the banks, really? Banks, debt, deficit, spending, we're at this spot in the market where we need, I think some positive news would be good. And I just where's it going to come from at this point? Because, I think the Fed's done what they could do. They can't do a whole lot more. And the market, markets need good earnings and just better, less stupid news from the government to kind of move along. So I think if anything, it's probably an opportunity for the more Main Street type stocks. Streaming companies might be getting a little interesting from that point of view, just because they're all at couple at a multi-year low now. So might be worth looking if you think Hollywood's a viable investment. It's on a fire sale right now. But anyway, and then that's what we got. Because again, there's not a lot more big news that we can wait for until we hear better news on the debt ceiling and spending. We know what the Fed's going to do. They've raised. So we're good for another month there. And, we need better earnings or, some positive news from somewhere else. So as of right now, I mean, that's what we got. I feel like we're kind of in this hold pattern here for a couple of weeks at least.
Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until our Thursday episode?
Well, I think that if we get a rally this week, we could make all we need is a 70-point day and we'll make a run at 4,200 on the S&P. I don't know if it has enough gas to do that, but we'll see if it does. But the thing is right now we don't have the news that would make it happen. And so the only thing that I could see pushing the S&P over the 4,200 level, which would be a new high for the year, would be as if Congress came together and we're going to be able to raise the debt ceiling. But we still cut spending, so the Republicans and Democrats are happy. They each declare that they won. That's the only way that I can see the market having a major rally. But in all honesty, at this stage of the game, the market might just say, we don't care. So we'll see what happens with it.
All right, listeners. That music means we have to get out of here so Mr. Rock Lobster can write his novel. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, take a break from your frenzied typing for 2 seconds, sir. And where should folks go if they want to learn more about the land of the pit?
Terrible person today. Terrible person with customers are asking me nonstop questions. 888-TRADE-01. Ask for Ted or Andrew, or go to Money Map Press for the weekly option cycles and get your learning on. You get 10% off if you say you heard this show.
Listeners, feel free to chip in to buy the Rock Lobster, the old mute button. I've sent him some in the past, and nice stuff, and I don't know, they don't work. So we'll have to find the unique solution for the Rock Lobster. A nice, big, bright, that old Office Depot easy button? Let's get him one of those for a mute button. How's that sound? We'll have a little GoFundMe to make that happen. Mr. Uncle Mike, while we're waiting for that, sir, where should folks go if they want to reach out to you about all things Roddy Piper or indeed St. Charles Wealth, sir?
Follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. Check out my website, stcharleswealth.com, if you're looking for a financial advisor who delves in the option product.
There you go. He likes to delve. Doesn't really delve into crypto, but we're going to be doing that next, listeners, on the Crypto Rundown. I'll be back in a little bit with our guests from Crossover Markets, so should be intriguing. Wish me luck that I am still awake for that moment there, listeners. Should be fun stuff nonetheless, so stay tuned for the Crypto Rundown. Coming up in a little bit, then we have our usual assortment of content this week. We have, coming up this week, Pro Q&A episode 100, listeners. And so, crazy that we're already at episode 100. Seemed like we just started doing those not too long ago. So maybe we'll celebrate a little bit of a palooza there. Maybe we'll open that one up to all and sundry so you can get a little bit of a taste of the pro. And we thought, what better person to do it with than the person we kicked it off with back on episode 1 with the Oracle of New Hampshire himself, Mr. Matt Anderson. So if you have questions about trade setup, execution, risk management, how should I do this? How does this one particular trade, how does this perform? He's got all the data. You can backtest it for you. That will be at noon Central on Wednesday, listeners. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a rare opportunity if you guys get a chance to sample a little bit of the pro goodness. So stay tuned for that. And we're back again on Thursday, another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SIBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SIBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's MIXLR.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.